Hi, everybody. Welcome to the IC Topic Chats for today. Um, Welcome to everybody live. Welcome to everybody on YouTube who watch this in their own time, in their pajamas on Saturdays or whenever it is. I see you guys out there. I know you're doing it on Saturdays while you're vacuuming or whatever. Today we're going to be talking about insurance. This is a core session or a core topic. We do these. This is be the fifth time I've done it. We've done it every year for the last since 2020. And we always do it in July. And we do core topics. We have a cycle of them. So we do core topics every month. And this is basically a way for people to kind of get up to speed with what they ought to know about how to run a business. And so we do some on how to set your fees and where to set up your office and whether to hire people or who you should hire, whether to even go into independent consulting and why it might make sense to do it and things like that. So we have one every month. We try and do it at the first session of the month, but it doesn't always work that way, particularly in July, because we usually take the first week off of July so people can go off and do their holidays. I usually try and do something during that week. But anyway, so you can see here, this is our session today on insurance. And it's an interesting thing because insurance is a very popular request. And a lot of people ask about this, particularly when they first get started. Now, this is from a couple of years ago. In fact, if you get onto the e-group or whatever the discussion group, you'll see it looks different now. I looked at it yesterday, and even the counts are different. We had 135, but this is probably the most requested, most it's the hottest topic within the independent consulting discussion group. We had 135 when I did this a couple of years ago. So I will also say, if you don't get the answers you want from me today or from the others when we get into the chat, go out here and type in whatever your question might be into the search bar, and you might find more information, because this has been a hot topic for as many years as I've been involved with the independent consulting TIG, and before that even. So you'll find posts back to 2008. So it's been going on for about 16 years. People have been asking about, what insurance do I need? And it's usually the first question people put out there when they start and they get involved with the TIG. Today, the things I want to make sure we talk about, here's types of insurance you may be thinking about. I'm not going to get into property or major medical and health. Actually, I think I'm going to talk I take that back. I am going to talk about medical. I think I need to update that. I'm going to talk about general liability, professional liability, which is also called E&O, or errors and omissions insurance. I will get into some health, workers' compensation, and I added this year for the first time cyber liability, which is a thing a lot of us are having to get because of our clients. So let's talk a little bit about general liability. General liability is that first insurance that most businesses get. It's generally a good idea. I actually first had an office at the Assurance Brokers building. They're a insurance broker called Assurance Brokers, and they had 2 suites, and one suite was for them and the other suite was that they rented out, and I got a space. And I said, should I get insurance? And they're like, you need insurance. You need general liability insurance. And that was their advice. And it's a couple $100 a year, but it covers all those random things that happen in just the course of running a business. So my example is, if I'm giving a workshop and somebody trips over my extension cord that I set up in the conference center and they break their arm, I'm going to start by saying, go check us, go to the hotel and sue them first, because they should have been taking care of that. But if I'm found to be liable, my general liability would take care of that. It's all for those random things that happen. It's not to do with your specific practice with regards to program evaluation. It has to do with just any kind of business accident that might happen. And so I'm going to, taking a step back, a lot of times you don't know you need these insurances until you get to a point where you're in a contract and you're getting deep into the 17th page of 25, and it talks about insurance. And then you start to see, oh, hey, I guess I do need this insurance. And general liability and E&O, or your professional liability, are things that are listed there. Which brings me to the next one, professional liability. Professional liability is an insurance that like I was saying, you don't know that you need it. And frankly, I'm going to tell you that I don't think you should get it until you know that you have to have it to get a contract. If you're in your earliest days of insurance of doing your program evaluation independent consulting practice, and nobody is requiring this, I probably wouldn't get this. It's going to cost you another couple $100 at first. If you, depending on who you go through, I've heard some people say it's like $1,200 for them. I can tell you that if you're in the educational research world, education, you can go through AERA, get a membership, and then it costs you like $260. I don't think you should be paying more than $1,000. If you go through an insurance company and they say it's going to cost you $1,200, which it did for me the first time I went through it, you need to ask around, or you need to make sure that they understand you're very low risk, because to this date, I don't know anybody who's ever called in and needed to use their professional liability. When we get into chat, if I'm wrong, I want somebody to tell me, because I ask this question every single time, and this is the 5th time I've given this session. And I've also done versions of this session at the conference, and I still haven't found anybody. There's always like I heard somebody who once did, but I have never found and talked to a person who's ever had to call in and use their professional liability. So what is professional liability? This is the insurance that covers any kind of harm that may happen as a result of what you do in your professional life. So if we were an architect, you definitely need this, because if a building falls down and kills people, that's where your insurance comes in. And you can imagine an architect's professional liability insurance is a lot more, because there's a lot more at risk. If you write an evaluation opinion, somebody takes that at your word, and then something terrible happens as a result of it because they've taken your advice and they feel like you're at fault for that. I think it's going to be a hard case to make, but if they do, this is where your professional liability insurance would come in. It's very frequent if you're working with a large university or other large organizations, but for me, it's the large universities where they ask to be additionally insured. And you see, I put that in the quotes at the bottom bullet point. They want to be able to basically say, they can call up the insurance company and say, we have a damage, and they want it to go more quickly. And I'm going to show you an example of that at the end. Property insurance. Sometimes you'll see this called marine policy or renter's insurance. This covers your equipment like a computer. You may be required to have it. We don't have renter's insurance, though I think technically I'm supposed to have one for our lease. I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to do that, because we buy all of our furniture and secondhand. That's a whole nother conversation, but none of our stuff is really that valuable. We have really, really nice desks that we buy from these businesses that go out of business, and then we go in there and I pick them up and I disassemble them and I take them to the office and I reassemble them in an office, and they cost like a couple $100. It's not worth insuring. So I don't insure any of our furniture. You can make a case for insuring your computers, because those are probably fairly valuable. We don't insure those either. Occasionally, we have a staff member who will, destroy their computer by accident, and I just go buy a new one. I figure it's cheaper than getting the insurance for all of the computers that we have in the office. And as far as our other peripherals like screens and other things like that, we buy those all secondhand too. So we really don't spend a lot of money. I spend a lot of money on a first good computer. And then the rest of it, we don't spend a lot of money. So I don't insure those things, but you may want to think about that. You may check to make sure if there's anything that's valuable. Like you can perhaps use your credit card to insure things for 90 days from purchase. And so that might make sense too. And I know a lot of you guys know things, and this is one of the reasons why I do these IC topic chats, because people are this always happens with insurance in particular. People tell me things I never knew, and I'm always learning, and that's why I do this. So major medical and health. First of all, if you're in Canada, congratulations. You don't have to, you can zone out for a couple minutes here. You've got healthcare because it's how it works in your country. When you're first starting out, most of us, myself included, worked off of our spouse's insurance, and the that worked out fairly well because you don't have to worry about it, and um, that's that's the way to go about it. I will say, when you do get insurance for yourself, and if you have staff, you have to offer the same insurance to your staff as you do to yourself. It's like that's a law in the United States. Our first health care plan that we gave to people was a reimbursement plan called QSERA. That stands for Qualified Small Employer Health Reimbursement Account. And so what would happen was people would have their medical expenses, and then they would file those expenses through a company. We used PeopleKeep, and I thought that they actually were really easy to work with. And PeopleKeep is a benefits company that does a lot of things, but they include the health reimbursement accounts. And PeopleKeep would approve it. And so I would hear give Joe Smith $227.32 out of his health reimbursement account. And so I didn't know what it was. It could be pimples, it could be something wrong with his toes, it could be therapy, any number of things. And it's great because you don't want to get into the business of knowing all the problems there. So I would just know what the amount was. I know it went through a process for approval, and that worked out okay. Now, what happened to me was 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, a survey went out amongst the small firms, and about who has healthcare, and everybody had healthcare except for one, and we were the one. And that's, I guess we better get something. So we now go through United Healthcare. My process for that was to work through. It was a personal or a friend who used to be the HR director at the university I used to work at, and she's started a little side consulting business, and she helped me think through the process, and so that worked out pretty well. So now I have it was definitely one of those holy crap moments, trying to figure out healthcare. And it is mind-numbing to think that I'm now providing healthcare for a group of people, including myself and my family. But it was exciting to finally get there. And so we're there now, but we do go through United Healthcare. If you're becoming a for real firm where you want to recruit people, I can tell you that we had a couple potential staff members, one who left and quoted the fact that we didn't have a healthcare plan, and one person who said, I would come to work for you if you had a healthcare plan, but you don't have one, and I don't want to figure it out on my own. So that becomes a recruitment necessity. If you want to recruit people, that's what you're going to have to do. Workers' comp. Let me just start by saying this. If you're a one-person operation, you don't need workers' compensation. You do not need workers' compensation if you're a one-person operation. And you'll see this. So read your contracts, because if you sign a contract that says you will provide workers' compensation and you don't, I don't know what will happen to you. Probably nothing. But you usually want to read your contracts carefully, particularly for the insurance. Look for the workers' compensation thing and tell them you're not going to have workers' compensation insurance because you have no one in your employ. If you are, if you have subcontractors, I don't think you need workers' compensation. If you have subcontractors, you often do need to cover them for the previous professional liability insurance that we were talking about two or three slides ago. I just looked it up last night. We have 14 employees, and we paid $1,200 per year through this group called AP Indigo. I didn't know what to do with workers' compensation, and I was a little bit blurred out by it, and I thought, I don't know. And it was like I clicked a link in QuickBooks, and it became super easy. And like it feels, I mean, obviously $100 a month feels like a lot of money for something that is not likely to be used, but I guess I have to have it. And frankly, we have 21 stairs from the first floor to the second floor where we are, and people carry things, and I worry about this stuff all the time. I'm like, so if somebody gets hurt, it should be covered. If you are talking to a carrier, somebody who's looking into this, you better let them know that you're low risk, because who knows, make sure that they understand your organization. And I'm going to talk about the North American Industry Classification System, the NAICS code, in just a second. Cyber liability. I added this slide on because a lot of us are needing this. I didn't know what it was until like 2 years ago. and we had a client in Rhode Island and their school district required it from us. And I said, oh, well, okay. And so you'll see the quote, the first bullet is the definition that I got from some website that offers cyber liability insurance. It basically covers you in the event there's a data breach. The first year we got it, it was $1,000. The second year was $1,500, and last year was $1,700. So we're finding this is listed in our contracts now with our larger organizations, along with professional liability. So it's become a new and expensive cost of doing business. And I hope I never have to figure out how to use it, because if I have a data breach, that would be a really embarrassing thing, although it seems to be happening with quite regularity a lot nowadays. And we as Goshen are working with a lot of education data and fully secure data out there, as it seems. So we are protected, and you probably want to have a whole conversation about how you're protecting your data. That I'm not even sure I'm qualified to talk about that, but we do spend time thinking about that. So some other insurance coverages, you can see cyber liability was my first one that I didn't list, but I added it, so I haven't taken it off this, so I have to remember that for next year. You may be required to have auto or employee car rental insurance. You'll see this on contracts too. Auto insurance for when you're traveling to and from a client site, particularly larger campus, like a university campus, they might have that. I've had to buy auto insurance for remote work, and it made no sense. And I said, this makes no sense. And they didn't care, and they made me get it anyway. And it was for a big contract. And I said, okay, whatever. It's just, again, the cost of doing business, a couple $100 for, a big contract, whatever. But you'll see that from time to time. I don't have travel insurance. I remember Laura Keene and I were giving the presentation on the pre-conference workshop on independent consulting with Gail Barrington when she was kind of passing the reins to us. This was back in 2016 or 2017. And she started talking about all this travel insurance she got, and she gets, and we were like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? And then the pandemic hit, and I lost a lot of money in travel costs because I pre-bought everything and I couldn't get it back. And I'm like, she's a genius. I love her. Anyway, so that's something to think about. Life insurance. You may want to think about life insurance, particularly if you are a sole breadwinner or your family is. I don't have life insurance. We have retirement funds that would kick in the event we need them, but life insurance, I think a lot of you guys know what that is and probably know it better than me, but you may want to think about that in the event of an accident. Long-term disability is at the bottom, but I think that kind of is in the same area. If you have an unexpected injury where you're unable to work for a period of time, that kicks in to help provide for you. You may want to think about extended warranties, although extended warranties are often ways to just make extra bucks off something that's not likely to happen, or even if it does, people will forget that they even have it. But if you're diligent about paying attention to it, you might want to think about an extended warranty, but that is insurance. Directors and officers insurance, hypothetically, we might want to have that for our firm. That's the idea that if something happens and then they want to go after the board members, the directors and the officers of the company, those people, particularly for a nonprofit, you want to have directors and officers insurance. They might be held liable. And then ironically, I'm putting together this presentation yesterday and my phone rings and it's State Farm. This was a personal side of things. And they go, your umbrella policy is getting ready to renew and we have to ask you some questions. I'm like, this is so weird because it was like so meta. I'm like sitting there trying to do a presentation on insurance, and my insurance company calls me to talk about my umbrella policy. But that is basically where, when all else fails and all your other insurance is now been extinct, or you've used it all up, the umbrella policy will kick in. Usually people will have like $1 million umbrella policy, but you need to determine the amount that you want for that. And I already talked about long-term disability. So an accord statement, that is, and I'm going to show it as soon as I get done describing this slide. Accord is the Association for Cooperative Operations Research and Development. I don't understand what any of that means, but it's basically your insurance statement that you often share with people. That is a nonprofit organization and they share data across different people, but it's the statement, the ACORD statement that you often share with people to show that you've got all the things in place. I had no idea what it was. And that's why I actually put this on here, because I actually wanted to learn what an ACORD statement was a couple of years back. And this is where you'll all show the also insured. So I'm going to pop open our current ACORD statement. You should be able to see all of this. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Move some things around here. You'll see this is the ACORD. That's where it was right there. Here's the contact name, and I don't have my pointers on, but you can see our producer is over here on the left-hand side. That's the insurance brokers company. That's the people who kind of coordinate our insurance for us. And the actual insurers here are listed. And you see A, B, and C. Okay, so we have commercial general liability through them. I don't have my cyber liability. No, I do. I don't have my workers' compensation through them, but I do have professional liability and cyber liability through them. And that's the amounts that are the limits or the aggregates, the highest amounts that they'll pay. Good question that I know will come up. How much should I get? I have 3 million for general aggregate because it doesn't cost that much more than 2 million. And this is an important one for your professional liability. I've recently seen universities require 3 million for the high number, that's the aggregate. And I fight them on that. I go, I don't need to go get more insurance I recently had one that was like $11,000 contract and they wanted me to have a $3 million contract. I'm like, if we do damage, and we're not going to do $3 million worth of damage. I think $2 million would be more than enough. And they bought my argument. But and down here you'll see I included the one where there's a certificate holder. So this is the one for Southern Illinois University. So they asked for what I call also insured. They will tell you exactly how they want the description of listed. The Board of Trustees is an additional insured. And then you'll see the certificate holder here. And this is what I sent to the Southern Illinois University so they could have on file and they could feel happy, and then they could release their purchase order to me so I could bill them for all the money. Anyway, so that's that. Let's go back to the main presentation. So 5.5 suggestions. This is something I like to do. If you're new, I always have some suggestions at the end, and I always have a half suggestion just for fun. Insurance brokers they may save you money. I used to say they will save you money until I started down the early stages of health insurance before I ended up with my other colleague. And I felt like our company was putting me in a direction where there was conflicts of interest and people were making money and they weren't. I felt like felt very dirty. I didn't know what was going on there. So be careful. Obviously, ask a lot of questions. I stepped away from that process. Anyway, know your NAICS code. That's the North American Industry Classification System. They're going to ask you what your NAICS code is. And you can type in this phrase NAICS code, and you'll see it'll pop up and you'll have a lot of opportunities. Mine's 611710, which I think tells me that I'm in the educational consulting business, something like that. If you're in the early stages of healthcare, you might want to consider this QSERA plan. Although I can tell you the QSERA plan is only going to get you to the point where at some point you're actually probably going to need to provide healthcare for your staff, if you have a staff. If you're by yourself, I think a lot of people will probably talk about the exchange when we get into the comments section, when we get into the chat section, or if you have the option you have a spouse or a partner who can provide healthcare for you. That's usually the way a lot of us start our businesses. But if you're in Canada, wake up again, because we're talking about other stuff now. You don't have to worry about it if you're in Canada. If you're looking for professional liability insurance, think about these different organizations like AERA, the American Psychological Association. I put AEA in question mark. I just talked with Anisha Lewis 3 weeks ago when I was at the Summer Evaluation Institute 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. And she says, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still trying to work on that. And so I put this presentation originally together 4 years ago, so we're still not there, but it is a conversation. And I just talked to her about it again. So who knows? It might happen. I wouldn't hold your breath, but AEA may eventually provide help and the opportunity for professional liability insurance. I suggest you insure your expensive equipment, or at least consider it, but you don't need to worry about your inexpensive furniture, because frankly, you shouldn't be buying brand new furniture. If you can buy really, really wonderful furniture through secondhand sites like the Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. I used to go through Craigslist. I'm not sure. I haven't been through Craigslist in a while, but sure they're still out there. And that's it. So I'm going to stop share and I'm going to stop the recording. So everybody out there in YouTube world, I'll see you guys later. Everybody here who's here live, this is the time for you to chat. Bye, YouTube people.